I know. I'm a terrible person. I don't need anyone to tell me that, I remind myself every single day. But the worst part? If I could go back, I don't know if I'd change what happened. Let me start from the beginning. The perfect love story, or so I thought. I met Jake in college. He was the kind of guy every girl wanted, tall, athletic, charming, and so damn sweet. The type of guy who holds open doors, sends good morning texts, and remembers the little things. We dated for 6 years before he proposed, and by then, I was sure I had found the love of my life. The thing is, Jake wasn't just my best friend. He already had one, Ethan. Ethan had been in Jake's life since childhood. They grew up together, played football together, and even went to the same university. If Jake was the golden retriever, Ethan was the black cat. He was sarcastic, brooding, and way too good-looking for his own good. The kind of guy who always had a smirk, who acted like nothing mattered, but his eyes told a different story. And I hated that I noticed. The wedding that should have been perfect. Fast forward to our wedding day. The venue was stunning, a dreamy garden set up with fairy lights and soft music playing in the background. My dress was perfect. My bridesmaids looked like something out of a Pinterest board. Everything was exactly how I had imagined it since I was a little girl. Except for one thing. I couldn't stop looking at Ethan. It wasn't like I hadn't noticed him before, but that day, something shifted. Maybe it was the way he looked at me when I walked down the aisle, like he was seeing me for the last time. Maybe it was the tension that had always been there, simmering under the surface, finally reaching its boiling point. Or maybe it was the champagne. The moment everything changed. After the ceremony, there was the usual reception chaos, photos, speeches, dancing. I should have been glowing, drunk on love and happiness. But instead, I felt suffocated. Every time Jake kissed me, I felt like a fraud. Every time he whispered, "I love you," I felt like I was lying when I said it back. And Ethan? He avoided me like the plague. Until he didn't. It was late into the night. The party was still going strong, but I needed a break. I slipped away to a quiet balcony overlooking the ocean, the cool breeze finally giving me space to breathe. That's when I heard the door open behind me. Ethan. We didn't say anything at first. Just stood there in silence, the only sound being the muffled music from inside. Then, he sighed. "This is a mistake," he said, voice low. I knew what he meant, but I played dumb. "What is?" He turned to me then, and the look in his eyes almost knocked the air out of my lungs. It was anger, sadness, longing, all tangled into one. "You. Marrying him." I should have been offended. I should have walked away. But instead, I whispered the words I had been too afraid to admit. "I know." That's all it took. I don't know who moved first, but suddenly his lips were on mine, desperate and rough, like we were both drowning and this was our only way to breathe. His hands gripped my waist, pulling me closer, and for the first time that night, I felt alive. It was reckless. It was selfish. And it was over in minutes. When we finally pulled away, reality crashed down on us. I was standing there in my wedding dress, lips swollen, hair messy, my new husband just inside that building. Ethan ran a hand through his hair, breathing heavily. "We can't." "I know," I whispered. And then we walked back inside like nothing had happened. The aftermath. It's been a year. I'm still married to Jake. We bought a house, got a dog, and from the outside, we're the picture-perfect couple. But every time I see Ethan, it's like my body remembers. We never spoke about that night. We never did it again. But the tension is still there, alive in every stolen glance, every accidental touch, every moment where I wonder if he regrets it as much as I do. Or if, like me, he doesn't regret it at all. I told myself I could live with it. That I could shove it so deep into the past that it would become nothing more than a fading memory. But memories don't fade when you see the person who shares them with you at every family barbecue, every game night, every Sunday brunch. Jake is still oblivious. He trusts Ethan like a brother, which makes me hate myself even more. And Ethan? He acts normal. Too normal. He jokes, teases, plays his role so well that sometimes I wonder if that night was just a mistake to him, if it was just a moment of weakness, nothing more. But then there are the moments that undo me. Like last month, when Jake and I hosted a dinner party. It was all laughter and wine, the perfect married couple vibe. But at one point, as I was clearing the table, Ethan brushed past me. It was barely a touch, just the slightest graze of his fingers on my arm, but it sent fire through my veins. I looked up, and for the briefest second, our eyes met. That same hunger. That same regret. And then it was gone. He turned away, clinking his beer bottle against Jake's, grinning like nothing had happened. But something had. The cracks are starting to show. Jake has started noticing that something is off. "Are you okay?" he asked last night as we lay in bed. His fingers traced absent-minded circles on my arm. I forced a smile. "Of course. Just tired." He frowned. "You've been quiet lately." I kissed him, hoping that would be enough of an answer. But even as his arms wrapped around me, all I could think about was Ethan. I don't know how much longer I can do this. The weight of it is suffocating me. I love Jake, or at least, I love the idea of him. The safety, the stability, the version of me that exists when I'm with him. But with Ethan, it's something different. Something dangerous. Something real. The breaking point. I thought I could keep pretending. I really did. Until last weekend. Jake, Ethan, and a few of our friends planned a weekend trip to a cabin in the mountains. It was supposed to be a fun getaway, bonfires, hiking, too much alcohol. But on the second night, things took a turn. Most of the group had gone to bed, leaving just me, Jake, and Ethan sitting by the dying fire. Jake had been drinking, his head resting against my shoulder, his words slurring. "I got so lucky with you," he murmured, kissing my temple. "Did you know that, Ethan? I hit the jackpot." Ethan let out a low chuckle, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Yeah," he said, voice tight. "I know." Jake passed out not long after, leaving just the two of us. I should have gone inside. I should have left. But instead, I stayed. The silence stretched between us, thick with everything we weren't saying. "You're going to ruin him," Ethan finally said, his voice barely above a whisper. His words hit me like a punch to the gut. "I know," I admitted. For a long moment, he just stared at me. Then he shook his head and let out a bitter laugh. "You should have been mine." And just like that, the ground beneath my feet disappeared. I couldn't breathe. Couldn't move. Because I had spent so long pretending that what happened between us was just a mistake, just lust, just a moment of weakness. But it wasn't. It was so much more than that. I opened my mouth to say something, anything, but then Jake stirred in his sleep, and just like that, the moment was gone. Ethan stood up, raking a hand through his hair. "Good night, Savannah," he murmured before walking inside, leaving me alone with the truth I had been running from. I'm not sure how much longer I can keep this secret buried. Because the truth isn't that I cheated. The truth is that I married the wrong man. After that night at the cabin, everything felt different. Or maybe it was just me. Maybe it was the way Ethan stopped pretending. He didn't flirt anymore. He didn't steal glances or brush past me when no one was looking. Instead, he kept his distance, so much so that even Jake noticed. "Did something happen between you and Ethan?" Jake asked one night as we were brushing our teeth. I choked on my toothpaste. "What?" "No, why?" He frowned, rinsing his mouth. "I don't know. He's been weird. Kind of cold." I shrugged, forcing myself to act casual. "Maybe he's just dealing with something." Jake didn't push. He never did. He trusted me too much for that. But Ethan's absence, his distance, was driving me insane. I told myself I wanted him to back off. That it was better this way. But when someone who used to make your heart race suddenly starts acting like you don't exist, it does something to you. It makes you reckless. So I did something stupid. I texted him. Me, can we talk? No reply. Hours passed. Then a whole day. Then finally. Ethan, no. No? That was it? I stared at my phone, heart hammering. I wanted to throw it across the room. So I did something even stupider. I showed up at his apartment. The night it all fell apart. Ethan looked surprised when he opened the door, but not in a good way. Savannah, he muttered, running a hand through his hair. You can't be here. I just want to talk, I said. His jaw tightened. There's nothing left to say. I stepped inside anyway, closing the door behind me. Bullshit. He let out a heavy sigh, shaking his head. You married him, Savannah. You made your choice. I swallowed hard. That night at the cabin, you said I should have been yours. He went still. I took a step closer. Did you mean it? His eyes flashed with something dark. Anger. Frustration. Want. Then suddenly, his hands were on me, and his lips crashed against mine. It wasn't soft. It wasn't gentle. It was everything we had been holding back for way too long. And for the first time in a year, I didn't feel guilty. I felt alive. But the thing about secrets? They don't stay secrets forever. And I was about to learn that the hard way. The moment everything shattered. I don't know how long we stood there, seconds, minutes, lifetimes, but the knock on the door yanked us back to reality. A familiar voice on the other side. Ethan? You home? My stomach dropped. Jake. Ethan looked at me, eyes wide with panic. Shit. I shoved him away, my heart slamming against my ribs. What the hell is he doing here? I don't know. Ethan hissed. The knock came again. Dude? You there? I did the only thing I could think of, I ran. Ethan's apartment had a back door that led to a stairwell. I slipped out just as Ethan opened the front door, pressing myself against the cold brick wall as I listened. Hey, man, Jake said. Sorry to just drop by. Savannah's been acting weird, and I figured. I didn't hear the rest. I ran down the stairs as fast as I could, my heart pounding in my ears. I had crossed a line I could never uncross. And now, I had no idea how much longer I could keep the truth from the one person who trusted me the most. Because one way or another, this was all going to come crashing down. And when it did, someone was going to get hurt. The day everything came crashing down. Secrets have a way of unraveling, no matter how tightly you try to hold the strings. And mine? It unraveled faster than I ever could have imagined. It started with a text from Ethan. Ethan, we need to talk. Now. I felt sick. I hadn't spoken to him since that night at his apartment, since I had barely escaped before Jake could find me. But something about his message felt urgent. Me, what's wrong? No answer. Then, 15 minutes later, a text from Jake. Jake, where are you? My hand shook as I typed back. Me, at home. Why? His reply nearly stopped my heart. Jake, we need to talk. I'm on my way. I felt the floor drop from beneath me. The confrontation. When Jake walked through the door, I knew immediately that something was wrong. His face was pale, his eyes dark, his hands clenched into fists. I swallowed hard. Jake, what's going on? He didn't answer. He just pulled out his phone, tapped the screen a few times, and turned it toward me. A video. A video of me and Ethan. Kissing. Hands tangled. Bodies pressed together. I gasped, my whole body going cold. Where did you get that? Jake's voice was eerily calm. Ethan's neighbor has a security camera facing his back door. Oh my God. Oh my God. I could barely breathe. Jake, His expression twisted into something raw, something broken. How long? Tears welled up in my eyes. Jake, please. How long? He roared, his voice shaking the walls. I flinched. Silence stretched between us. Thick. Suffocating. Then, in a voice so quiet it barely sounded like his own, he whispered, was it ever real? And that was the moment my heart truly shattered. Because I didn't have an answer. Because I didn't know if my love for him was real or if I had just been playing a role. Because deep down, I think I had always belonged to Ethan. Jake didn't wait for an explanation. He just shook his head, let out a hollow laugh, and walked out the door. And just like that, the life I had built, the one I had sworn was perfect, was over. The aftermath. Jake never came back home that night. The next day, I got a text from his sister saying he was staying with family. 2 days later, I got divorce papers. And Ethan? I haven't seen him since. I heard from a mutual friend that he left town. Moved across the country. Started over. Maybe that was for the best. Because no matter how much I wanted him, no matter how much my heart had always pulled toward him, some things are never meant to be. And some mistakes? You pay for them forever.